The alarm bells echoed through the massive halls of the Galactic Council building. Tae-ho rushed down the long corridor, his four arms moving quickly as he tried to read the urgent messages flooding his communication device. Something was wrong, very wrong. He burst into the emergency meeting room where other council members were already gathering. The circular chamber buzzed with worried voices, speaking in dozens of different languages. Boram, the small blue-skinned Catherian, stood at the center podium. Her large eyes were wide with confusion. "Thank you all for coming so quickly," Boram said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have disturbing news to share. In the past 72 hours, we have lost contact with every single human settlement in known space." The room fell silent. Tae-ho felt his stomach drop. "Lost contact? What do you mean exactly?" Boram touched a control panel, and a huge, holographic map appeared above them. Hundreds of red dots marked human colonies, space stations, and outposts across the galaxy. Every human settlement has gone silent. No communication signals, no response to our calls, nothing. A tall, gray-skinned Zenthari named Wu Jin stood up slowly. He had worked closely with the human ambassador for many years. "I was supposed to meet Ambassador Martinez yesterday morning," he said quietly. "When I arrived at the human embassy, it was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty, like everyone had simply walked away." "That's impossible," growled Counselor Veltar, his rocky thorac features twisted in disbelief. "An entire species doesn't just disappear overnight." Boram nodded grimly. "That's what we thought too. So we sent investigation teams to the nearest human colonies. What they found was even stranger." She pressed another button and images appeared in the air. Empty streets, abandoned buildings, personal belongings left exactly where they had been dropped. "Look at this," Boram said, pointing to one image. "This is from New Sol Colony. You can see meals half-eaten on tables, workstations with projects still in progress, children's toys scattered in playgrounds. Everything suggests that people were going about their normal daily lives when they simply left." Tae-ho studied the images carefully. In one picture, he could see a coffee cup still steaming on a desk. A book lay open beside it, as if someone had been reading just moments before. Were there any signs of struggle? Any evidence of attack? "None," Boram replied. "Our teams found no weapon damage, no signs of fighting, no bodies. The humans just disappeared." Wu Jin cleared his throat. "I've been reviewing the last communications from human territories. Nothing seemed unusual. Trade reports were normal. Diplomatic messages were routine. Ambassador Martinez was planning a cultural exchange program for next month." His voice cracked slightly. "They showed no signs of preparing to leave." Counselor Isara, whose snake-like Nagan body coiled nervously around her chair, raised a question. "What about their ships? Their space fleets?" "Gone too," Boram answered. "Every human vessel has vanished. Military ships, cargo haulers, personal craft, even small shuttles. We can't find a single human-made ship anywhere in space." The room erupted in worried chatter. Species representatives spoke rapidly to each other in their native languages. Tae-ho tried to make sense of what he was hearing. An entire species had disappeared without a trace. It was unthinkable. "Order! Order!" called Chancellor Zephnir, the ancient Vexari leader. His crystalline body chimed softly as he moved. "We must approach this logically. What about their technology, their installations?" Boram brought up new images. "This is perhaps the strangest part. All human technology is still working perfectly. Their space stations maintain orbit. Their automated systems continue operating. Their trade computers are still processing transactions. It's as if the humans set everything to run without them before they left." "But where did they go?" demanded Veltar. "You can't move millions of people across the galaxy without anyone noticing." "We've searched everywhere," Boram said helplessly. "Our long-range sensors show no large fleet movements. No energy signatures indicating mass transportation. No evidence of where they went or how they left. Wu Jin spoke up again, his voice thoughtful. I've been thinking about my last conversation with Ambassador Martinez. She mentioned something strange. She said humans had been having unusual dreams lately. Dreams about hearing a voice calling them home. Dreams? Taeho scoffed. You think an entire species left because of dreams? I'm just reporting what she told me, Wu Jin replied defensively. She seemed troubled by it. Said it was happening to humans across the galaxy. They all heard the same voice, calling them to return to somewhere they'd never been. Chancellor Zephnir's crystalline features glowed brighter as he considered this. Regardless of the cause, we must deal with the situation. The humans controlled significant territory and resources. Their absence creates opportunities. Several council members nodded eagerly. Taeho found himself thinking about the rich mining systems humans had controlled. The Vexari could certainly make better use of those resources. The humans were always adequate, Councillor Isara said carefully. They weren't the strongest military force. They weren't the most advanced technologically. They weren't the smartest negotiators. Perhaps their departure isn't such a loss. Exactly, agreed Veltar. They were useful for basic tasks, but we can manage without them. Their territories can be redistributed among the more capable species. Boram looked uncomfortable with this discussion. Shouldn't we be trying to find them? To understand what happened? They were our allies. Were they, though? Taeho asked. The humans always kept to themselves. They rarely shared their advanced research. They maintained their own separate communication networks. Maybe they planned this departure all along. Wu Jin shook his head firmly. I worked with them for decades. They were committed to the Council, to galactic peace. This wasn't planned. Then explain how millions of people vanished without a trace, Veltar challenged. Wu Jin had no answer for that. Chancellor Zephnir called for order again. We will form investigation committees to study the abandoned human territories. We'll also create redistribution committees to manage their former holdings. Until we understand what happened, we must maintain stability. As the meeting continued with discussions of territory division and resource allocation, Boram sat quietly studying her data. Something bothered her about the whole situation. The humans hadn't just disappeared. They had left everything running, perfectly, as if they expected others to take over. Almost as if they had been preparing the galaxy to function without them. But why would they do that? And more importantly, what did they know that the Council didn't? The meeting ended with assignments and committees, but no real answers. As the representatives filed out to claim pieces of humanity's former empire, none of them noticed the small detail Boram had discovered in her final scans. In the deepest parts of space, where no ships normally traveled, sensitive instruments had detected faint energy readings that suggested something massive had moved through those regions recently, something that left no other trace except a whisper of impossible physics. The humans were gone, but Boram suspected they hadn't, simply vanished. They had gone somewhere the Council couldn't follow. Yet. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. Dae-hyun sat in his office staring at the red numbers on his screen. His trading company was losing money faster than he could count. What had started as promising opportunities to expand into former human territories had turned into a nightmare. His communication device buzzed with another angry message from a client. The shipment of rare crystals from the Vega system was 3 weeks late. Again. Dae-hyun rubbed his tired eyes and tried to explain to yet another furious customer that the shipping routes were no longer reliable. Before the humans left, cargo moved smoothly between systems. Ships followed established paths. Pirates stayed in the outer rim where human patrol fleets kept them contained. Now everything was chaos. Dae-hyun's assistant, Ji-won, entered the office carrying a stack of reports. Her normally cheerful face looked worried. Sir, we have another problem. The Transport Guild is refusing to take shipments through the Kepler corridor. Why? Daehyun asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. 3 more ships were attacked there this week, Ji-won replied. The pirates are getting bolder. They're hitting convoys in systems that used to be completely safe. Daehyun slammed his fist on the desk. Where are the Council security forces? Why aren't they protecting the trade routes? Ji-won shifted uncomfortably. The Council forces are busy. There's fighting breaking out in 4 different sectors. They don't have enough ships to patrol everything. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in government buildings and military headquarters. Hyojin stood before a holographic star map in the Council Defense Center, watching red warning symbols multiply across the display. Each symbol represented a crisis that demanded immediate attention. Report, she ordered tersely. Her aide, Subin, stepped forward. The situation continues to worsen. Pirate attacks have increased by 200% since the human departure. The Kalos and Zenthari are disputing mining rights in the Tau system. Border tensions between the Nagan and Thurak are escalating, and we just received word that the fringe colonies are declaring independence. Hyejin stared at the map in disbelief. 3 months ago, the galaxy had been peaceful. Trade flowed freely. Disputes were settled through diplomacy. The biggest military concern had been preventing smuggling. How did everything fall apart so quickly? She muttered. Subin hesitated before answering. Ma'am, I've been reviewing historical records. It appears that humans were involved in mediating most of these disputes. They maintained regular diplomatic contact with all parties. They also coordinated joint patrols that kept pirate activity contained. But they never told us they were doing all this, Hyejin protested. The humans attended council meetings, but they rarely spoke up. They seemed content to let other species take the lead. Perhaps they were taking the lead, Subin suggested quietly, just not in ways we noticed. Meanwhile, on the abandoned human research station orbiting Proxima 7, Kyung-soo made discoveries that troubled him deeply. He had volunteered to catalog human scientific equipment, expecting to find useful but unremarkable technology. Instead, he found laboratories that were decades ahead of anything the Council possessed. This can't be right, he whispered, staring at a device he couldn't even identify. The scanner readings showed energy patterns that shouldn't be possible according to known physics. His research partner, Yoon-soo, called out from across the lab. Kyung-soo, you need to see this. I found their computer files. Kyung-soo hurried over to where Yoon-soo stood before a massive holographic display. Data streams flowed across the screen in patterns too complex to follow. What am I looking at? Kyung-soo asked. Psychological profiles, Yoon-soo replied, her voice filled with awe. Detailed analysis of every council species, their behavioral patterns, decision-making processes, cultural blind spots, likely reactions to various scenarios. Kyung-soo leaned closer to read the data. The files contained information that would take teams of specialists years to compile. Yet the humans had assembled complete psychological profiles of every major galactic civilization. How did they know all this? He wondered aloud. Yoon-soo switched to another file. Look at this. It's titled Conflict Prevention Protocols. They've mapped out every potential source of tension between council species. Wars that could start. Trade disputes that might escalate. Resource conflicts that could tear the alliance apart. And they prevented all of this from happening, Kyung-soo realized, without anyone knowing they were doing it. The files revealed a vast network of human activities that the Council had never suspected. Humans had maintained private communication channels with every species. They had secretly mediated disputes before they became public. They had positioned their ships to deter aggression without seeming threatening. Most shocking of all, they had done this for centuries. There's more, Yoon-soo said, opening another directory. Something called the Convergence Protocol. Most of the files are encrypted, but I can see fragments. The partial data they could access mentioned preparation phases, graduation criteria, and something called species maturity assessment. References to an organization called the Architects appeared throughout the files. Who are the Architects? Kyung-soo asked. Yoon-soo shook her head. I don't know, but according to these files, the humans were reporting to them. Regular updates on our progress, our development, our readiness for something called independent operation. Back at Council, headquarters, emergency meetings had become daily routine. Today's crisis involved the breakdown of the Galactic Trade Network. Chancellor Zephnir's crystalline body flickered with stress patterns as he listened to increasingly desperate reports. The automated systems are failing, announced Trade Coordinator Bechtel. The network was designed to handle routine transactions, but it can't adapt to changing conditions. Without humans to manage the complex negotiations, trade agreements are collapsing. What do you mean the humans managed negotiations? Asked Councillor Veltar. The trade network was automated. On the surface, yes, Bechtel admitted reluctantly. But I've discovered that humans were constantly making small adjustments, resolving disputes between trading partners, renegotiating terms when circumstances changed. The automation only worked because humans were quietly fixing problems before they became critical. Taeho felt a growing sense of unease. Are you saying the humans were running our trade network? Not running it, Bechtel corrected. Maintaining it, like gardeners tending plants. The system looked automatic, but it required constant human attention to function properly. Similar revelations emerged from other departments. The communication network relied on human-designed protocols that no one else fully understood. Refugee assistance programs had been coordinated through human charitable organizations. Even the Council's own conflict resolution procedures had been developed with extensive human input. How did we miss all of this? Chancellor Zephnir asked in frustration. Bo-Ram, who had been quietly investigating the human disappearance, finally spoke up. Because they wanted us to miss it. Look at this. She activated a hologram showing communication logs from the past year. The humans systematically reduced their visible involvement in council affairs. They stopped attending non-essential meetings. They declined prominent positions. They gradually transferred responsibilities to other species. They were preparing us to function without them, Wu Jin realized with growing horror. But why? Taeho demanded. Why would they abandon us? Bo-Ram's expression was grim. Maybe they didn't abandon us. Maybe they graduated us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't left suddenly. They had been preparing for departure for months, possibly years. They had tried to teach the Council species to manage galactic civilization independently, and the Council had failed to learn. Now, with systems failing and conflicts erupting across the galaxy, they were beginning to understand what they had lost. The humans hadn't been just another species in the Council. They had been the invisible foundation that held everything together. Without them, galactic civilization was collapsing, and no one knew how to fix it. 6 months had passed since humanity vanished, and Young-soo stood on the bridge of his warship watching 2 massive fleets face each other across empty space. The Zilani battlecruisers gleamed silver in the starlight, while the Thurak heavy destroyers waited like dark stones ready to strike. Admiral, both fleets are powering weapons, reported his communications officer, Min Ah. The Zilani commander is demanding immediate Thurak withdrawal from the Kepler mining zone. Young-soo closed his eyes and tried to think. This was exactly the kind of situation that humans used to handle. They would have been here weeks ago, talking to both sides, finding some compromise that everyone could accept. Now he had 2 angry species ready to start the first major war in 300 years. Send a message to both fleets, he ordered. Council forces are en route. Both sides must power down weapons and withdraw to neutral positions. Minna looked doubtful, but sent the message. The response came back quickly from both fleets. Negative. The Zalani claimed ancient mining rights to the asteroids. The Thurak pointed to recent council agreements that gave them access. Neither side was willing to back down. Sir, Mina said quietly, we have 20 ships. They each have over 100. If fighting starts, we can't stop it. Youngsu nodded grimly. Before the humans left, conflicts like this simply didn't happen. Somehow, disputes got resolved before they reached this point. Now he was watching the careful peace of centuries about to shatter. Prepare for evacuation of civilian settlements, in both systems, he ordered, and send an emergency message to the Council. Tell them we're about to have our first interspecies war. Across the galaxy, Mi Jung crawled through the ruins of an ancient structure on a dead world at the edge of known space. Her xenoarchaeology team had been following strange energy readings when they discovered the massive underground complex. The architecture was unlike anything in council records. Professor, called her assistant Dong Jin from deeper in the ruins. You need to see this chamber. Mi Jung followed his voice through twisting corridors carved from some unknown black stone. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Her scanner showed energy readings that made no sense. She entered a vast circular room where Dong Jin stood before a towering wall covered in hieroglyphs. But these symbols were different. Some of them looked almost familiar. Are those... Mi Jung began, then stopped in shock. Those look like human writing. That's what I thought too, Dong Jin replied excitedly. But look at this. He pointed to sections where human letters were mixed with the strange shifting symbols. It's like they're translating between languages. Mi Jung approached the wall carefully. Her scanner was going crazy with energy readings. As she got closer, some of the symbols began to glow. Suddenly, words formed in her mind, not heard, but somehow understood directly. We are the architects, the message said. We seed the young species and guide their growth. When they are ready, we call our children home. Mi Jung stumbled backward. Dong Jin, are you getting this? He nodded, his face pale. It's speaking directly into our minds. The humans, they're not originally from Earth? The wall pulsed with new energy and more words formed. Humanity was placed on Earth to shepherd the galaxy's children toward maturity. When the lesson is complete, the teachers return to us. Teachers, Mi Jung whispered. The humans were teaching us. New images appeared on the wall, pictures of Earth in its early days, showing human ancestors being transported there by beings of incredible technology. Then scenes of human civilization growing and spreading across the galaxy. Always watching, always guiding, always preparing other species for independence. It's a test, Dong Jin realized. The whole thing is a test to see if we can survive without them. Meanwhile, on the struggling trade station orbiting Centauri Prime, Jae-sung tried to hold together a community that was falling apart. He was a Catherian administrator who had worked closely with humans for decades. When they left, the station's human population had simply vanished overnight, leaving him to manage thousands of aliens from dozens of species. Sir, the water recycling system is failing again, reported his chief engineer, Nam Woo. Without the human technicians, we can't figure out how to fix the advanced components. Jae-sung looked at the repair reports piling up on his desk. Life support systems breaking down, food production failing, transport schedules completely disrupted. The station had operated smoothly for over a century with human management. Now, 6 months later, it was dying. What about the technical manuals? He asked desperately. We have them, Namwoo replied. But they're written assuming knowledge we don't have. The humans must have learned this stuff over generations. We're trying to figure it out in weeks. A fight broke out in the common area. As Jae-sung spoke, Zalani refugees, displaced by the mining conflict, were arguing with Thurak traders over food rations. Without human mediators, every small disagreement became a major crisis. "Sir," his security chief, Hai Young, called over the intercom. "The Nagan delegation is threatening to leave the station. They say the Zalani refugees are taking up too much space." Jae Sung put his head in his hands. Humans had made this look so easy. They had somehow kept dozens of different species living and working together peacefully. Now he couldn't even prevent fights over food distribution. Back at council headquarters, emergency session followed emergency session. The Zalani-Thurak standoff had escalated when pirates attacked supply ships, heading to both fleets. Without cargo, both sides blamed each other for the raids. Now, 3 more species were choosing sides. "The situation is spiraling out of control," reported Intelligence Chief Bo Ram. "Our communication networks are experiencing systematic failures. Someone is attacking the relay stations." "Who?" demanded Chancellor Zephnir. "We don't know," Bo Ram admitted. "The attacks use technology we can't identify, but the pattern suggests they know exactly how our systems work." Tae-ho leaned forward. "Could it be the humans? Maybe they're testing us somehow?" "I don't think so," Bo Ram replied, displaying scan. "Data. The energy signatures don't match human technology. This is something else. Something that's been watching us and learning our weaknesses." The truth was worse than Tae-ho imagined. As galactic civilization crumbled, other forces were moving to take advantage of the chaos. Species that had been held in check by the careful balance humans maintained were now seeing opportunities for expansion. "There's more," Bo Ram continued. "We've detected massive fleet movements in the dark sector. Ships using technology that's generations ahead of ours. They're heading toward Council space." Young-Soo's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "Council Command, this is Admiral Young-Soo. The Zalani and Thurak fleets have opened fire. We have multiple casualties. Repeat, the war has begun." Chancellor Zephnir's crystalline body flickered with stress patterns. "How many ships do we have available for peacekeeping?" 40% of our fleet is already deployed trying to contain other conflicts," reported Defense Coordinator Sung Ho. "We can't be everywhere at once." "The humans could," Wu Jin said quietly. "Somehow they were everywhere at once." Mi Jung's voice came through the emergency communication system from the archaeological site. "Council, this is Professor Mi Jung. I've made a critical discovery. The humans weren't just another species. They were placed here by an ancient civilization called the Architects. Their job was to prepare us for independence." "Independence from what?" Tai-ho asked. "From them," Mi Jung replied grimly. "And according to these ruins, other species have faced this same test throughout galactic history. Most of them failed." "What happened to the ones that failed?" Chancellor Zephnir asked, though he feared the answer. "They destroyed themselves, fighting over the scraps of their collapsed civilization," Mi Jung reported. "The Architects don't intervene. If a species can't maintain peace and cooperation without guidance, they don't deserve to survive." The communication channels fell silent as the full weight of the situation became clear. Humanity hadn't abandoned them. They had graduated them to independence. The test was whether the Council species could maintain the civilization humans had built for them. So far, they were failing badly. War was spreading across the galaxy. Ancient enemies were awakening. The careful systems that had maintained peace for centuries were breaking down. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, unknown forces watched and waited for galactic civilization to collapse completely. The Council finally understood what they had lost when humanity departed, but understanding came too late to save them from the consequences of their own dependence. Dongwu stood on the bridge of the massive Council fleet ship, watching stars stream past the viewports. 100 ships from 12 different species followed behind him as they headed toward the galaxy's edge. It was the largest military operation in Council history, but they weren't going to fight a war. They were going to beg. "Admiral, we're approaching the coordinates Professor Mi Jung provided," reported his navigation officer, He Jin. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy readings ahead. Dongwu nodded grimly. 8 months had passed since humanity vanished, and galactic civilization was dying. The war between the Zalani and Thurak had spread to 6 more species. Pirate fleets controlled entire sectors. Half the Council worlds had declared independence or fallen to chaos. They needed the humans back, desperately. "Any response to our broadcast messages?" he asked. So Young, his communications specialist, shook her head sadly. "We've been transmitting on all frequencies for weeks. Every language we know, every diplomatic protocol in our database. If humans are out there, they're not answering." Behind the fleet's military ships came vessels loaded with everything the Council could offer: rare minerals, advanced technology, art treasures, even sacred relics some species had never shared with outsiders. If they found humanity, they were prepared to give everything to convince them to return. "Sir," called out scanner operator Jin Ho, "I'm detecting massive structures ahead. They're impossible." On the main screen, shapes appeared that hurt to look at directly. Geometric forms that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Surfaces that reflected stars that weren't there. Architecture that followed no known laws of physics. "Those are architect ruins," Dongwu realized, remembering Mi-jung's reports. "The beings who placed humanity on Earth." The fleet moved carefully through a field of ancient structures floating in empty space. Each building was the size of a small moon, yet they moved with impossible grace around each other in patterns that made no mathematical sense. "Admiral," So Young said excitedly, "I'm getting something. A signal coming from the largest structure. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge spoke in perfect Council standard, though somehow everyone heard it in their own native language simultaneously. "Welcome, children of the galaxy. We have been expecting you." Dongwu stepped forward. "This is Admiral Dongwu of the Galactic Council Fleet. We're searching for humanity. We need to speak with them." "Humanity has moved beyond your reach," the voice replied. "They have completed their assignment and joined us in higher dimensions, but we know why you have come." "Then you know our civilization is collapsing," Dongwu said desperately. "We need their help. We need them to come back." "Do you?" the voice asked. "Or do you need to learn what they tried to teach you?" Suddenly, the space around the fleet filled with images. Holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. War zones marked in red, failed colonies blinking out, trade routes abandoned. Millions of beings suffering as the systems humanity had maintained fell apart. "This is what happens when children refuse to grow up," the voice continued. "Humanity spent 10,000 years preparing your species for independence. They gave you every tool you needed, every lesson you required, every example of cooperation and wisdom." "We didn't know," Dongwu protested. "They never told us. They were preparing us for anything." "Because the lesson only works if you learn it naturally," the voice explained patiently. "A parent who constantly tells a child what to do raises a dependent. A parent who guides by example raises a leader." More images appeared. Scenes from across galactic history showing humans quietly mediating disputes, sharing technology, building bridges between hostile species, always in the background, always giving credit to others, always making their guidance look like natural cooperation. "Your species had every opportunity to observe and learn," the voice said. "Humans demonstrated peaceful conflict resolution thousands of times. They showed you how different species could work together. They created systems that would function without central control." Inho, the Council's chief philosopher who had joined the expedition, spoke up. "But we didn't understand. We thought they were just helping. We didn't realize it was training." "That was the point," the voice replied. "True wisdom cannot be forced. It must be discovered. Humanity hoped that by their example, your species would develop the character necessary for galactic leadership. And we failed," Dongwu said bitterly. "You are failing. the voice corrected. The test is not over. On the screen, new images appeared. Scenes of council members working desperately to hold their civilization together. Young Su's fleet trying to keep peace between warring species. Jae Sung managing his failing station with determination despite impossible odds. Scientists and engineers struggling to understand human technology. Some among you are learning, the voice observed. They are discovering that cooperation requires sacrifice, that leadership means serving others, that true strength comes from lifting up the weak rather than dominating them. Dongwu felt a spark of hope. Then there's still a chance? We can still pass this test? Perhaps, but not with humanity holding your hand. The test is whether you can govern yourselves without shepherds. So Young stepped forward. Could we at least speak to them? To the humans? Just once? The voice was quiet for a long moment. Then the largest architect structure began to glow. Reality seemed to bend around it as impossible energies swirled through, dimensions that normal matter couldn't reach. Very well. One conversation. But understand that the humans you knew no longer exist as you remember them. They have evolved beyond physical form. The space in front of the fleet shimmered, and a figure appeared. It looked human, but somehow more. Its form was translucent, made of light and energy rather than flesh and bone. When it spoke, its voice carried the warmth of every human Dongwu had ever known. "Hello, old friends," the being said. "We hoped you would find your way here eventually." "Please," Dongwu begged. "Our civilization is falling apart. We need you to come back. We need your guidance." The human figure smiled sadly. "No, you don't. You need to find your own way. That was always the goal." "But we're failing," Inho protested. "Wars are breaking out. People are suffering. The systems you built are collapsing." "Because you're trying to maintain them the old way," the human replied. "You're looking for someone else to solve your problems instead of growing beyond the need for shepherds." New images filled the space around them. Scenes of other galaxies where species had faced similar tests. Some had learned to cooperate and had built magnificent civilizations that spanned dimensions. Others had destroyed themselves in wars over the remains of their collapsed societies. "Every intelligent species faces this moment," the human explained. "The choice between dependence and independence, between competition and cooperation, between wisdom and power." "How do we choose correctly?" Dongwu asked. "By choosing each other," the human said simply. "Every time there's a conflict, choose understanding over victory. Every time there's a crisis, choose cooperation over competition. Every time there's a choice between helping yourselves and helping others, choose to help others." "That's what you did for us," So Young realized. "For 10,000 years," the human confirmed. "We chose to help you instead of expanding our own power. We chose to teach instead of conquer. We chose to guide instead of rule. Now, you must make the same choices." The human figure began to fade. "We cannot return to save you. That would only prove you haven't learned the lesson. But we will be watching. And if you succeed in building a truly cooperative civilization, we will welcome you as equals among the evolved species." "Wait!" Dongwu called out. "What if we fail completely? What if everything falls apart?" The human's final words echoed across space as its form disappeared. "Then you will have chosen your own path. Not every species is ready for true civilization, but we believe in you. We always have." The architect structures began to fade as well, shifting out of normal space into dimensions the council ships couldn't follow. Soon, the fleet was alone among the stars. "Admiral," So Young said quietly, "I'm detecting energy signatures moving toward council space. The hostile fleets we detected earlier are accelerating their approach." Dongwu stared at the empty space where the humans had been. They had come looking for salvation and found responsibility instead. The humans wouldn't save them. They had to save themselves. "Set course for home," he ordered, and send a message to all council worlds. Tell them we found our answer. It just wasn't the answer we wanted. The fleet turned back toward the galaxy's core, carrying with them the final lesson humanity had to offer. True civilization couldn't be given as a gift. It had to be earned through choice, sacrifice, and the courage to grow beyond dependence. Behind them, the last traces of architect technology vanished into higher dimensions, leaving the council species alone to face their greatest test, the test of becoming truly civilized. 1 year had passed since humanity disappeared. Yunji stood in the ruins of the council chambers, looking at the empty seats where representatives once gathered. Half the species had withdrawn from the council. The other half were too busy fighting wars, or dealing with internal collapse to attend meetings. Outside the windows, she could see smoke rising from the lower city, where Zalani and Thurak refugees fought over food shipments. The capital world of the galaxy had become just another war zone. Chancellor, her aide Byung-ho called softly. The communication array is working again. We're receiving a transmission. Yunji turned hopefully. Maybe it was news that the fighting had stopped somewhere. Maybe one of the lost colonies had been restored. Any good news would be welcome. Instead, she found herself looking at a human face on the main screen. But this wasn't like the energy being they had encountered at the architect ruins. This looked like a normal human, sitting in what appeared to be a simple room. "Hello," the human said with a gentle smile. "My name is Sung-min. I speak for those who once lived among you." "You're human," Yunji whispered. "But I thought you had all evolved beyond physical form." "Most of us have," Sung-min replied. "But some of us maintain physical bodies, so we can communicate with species who haven't made that transition yet. We've been watching your progress." Yunji felt anger flare in her chest. "Watching us fail, you mean? Watching our civilization tear itself apart while you do nothing to help?" "Yes," Sung-min said simply. "That's exactly what we've been doing." The blunt honesty shocked Yunji. "Why? We were your allies. We worked together for thousands of years. How can you just watch us suffer?" Sung-min's expression remained calm, but sad. "Because helping you now would mean you had learned nothing. It would prove that our 10,000 years of guidance was wasted." On the screen behind Sung-min, images appeared showing the current state of the galaxy. War zones, failed colonies, broken trade routes, millions of refugees fleeing violence. The civilization humanity had helped build was indeed falling apart. "Look at what's happening," Yunji pleaded. "Entire species are going extinct. Children are starving. Beautiful worlds are being destroyed by war. Surely preventing this suffering is more important than some test." "Is it?" Sung-min asked quietly. "Let me show you something else." New images replaced the scenes of destruction. Ho Seok, a human who had stayed behind to observe, had been documenting everything. The pictures showed council species working together in ways they never had before. "This is the Kepler system," Sung-min explained, "where the war between the Zalani and Thurak began. Look closely." Yunji saw Zalani and Thurak engineers working side by side to repair mining equipment damaged in the fighting. Former enemies, sharing resources and knowledge to rebuild what they had destroyed. And here, Sung-min continued, showing new scenes. Station Commander Jae Sung has created the first truly integrated multi-species community. 12 different races working together without human mediation. They've developed new forms of cooperation we never achieved when we were managing things for you. More images flowed past. Scientists from hostile species collaborating to solve the communication network failures. Youngsu's fleet, now including ships from former enemy worlds, working together to fight pirates. Refugee camps where different species cared for each other's children. "You're cherry-picking," Yunji accused. "Showing us the few successes while ignoring all the failures." "Am I?" Sung-min asked. Or are you so focused on the failures that you can't see the growth happening around you? He gestured, and a new display appeared showing galactic statistics. Yes, there are wars, but look at how quickly they're being resolved compared to historical conflicts. Yes, there are system failures, but see how rapidly new solutions are being developed. Yes, there is suffering, but notice how species that were enemies for millennia are now working together to reduce that suffering. Yunji studied the data reluctantly. Despite all the chaos and destruction, she had to admit that some of the numbers were surprising. Wars that historically lasted decades were ending in months. Species were sharing technology at unprecedented rates. New forms of cooperation were emerging from the crisis. This is how civilizations grow up, Sung Min explained gently. Through struggle, through failure, through learning that they must choose cooperation over competition, even when it's difficult. But so many are dying, Yunji whispered. Yes, Sung Min agreed sadly. That's the price of independence. When humanity guided the galaxy, we prevented most conflicts before they started. We maintained artificial peace through our intervention. But artificial peace isn't real peace. It's just delayed conflict. He leaned forward, his expression intense. Real peace comes when species choose not to fight, even when they could win. Real cooperation comes when different races help each other without being forced to. Real civilization emerges when beings choose to sacrifice for strangers simply because it's right. And if we can't learn these lessons, Yunji asked, if our civilization collapses completely? Sungmin was quiet for a long moment. Then you will join the thousands of other species throughout galactic history who couldn't make the transition from dependence to independence. The universe will move on. Other young races will get their chance. That's cold, Yunji said bitterly. It's reality, Sungmin replied. The architects have watched billions of species face this test over millions of years. Some pass and join the community of truly advanced civilizations. Others don't. Neither outcome is wrong. It simply is. What? About humanity? Yunji demanded. Did you pass this test when you were young? Sungmin smiled sadly. We failed it. Twice. The admission shocked Yunji. What do you mean? The first time, we destroyed ourselves in nuclear war. The architects restored us and gave us another chance. The second time, we conquered the galaxy and enslaved every other species we encountered. The architects stopped us and reset our development again. Images appeared showing human history that no council database had ever recorded. Earth burning in atomic fire, human fleets conquering world after world, vast slave empires built on the suffering of alien races. It took us 3 attempts to learn wisdom, Sungmin continued. To understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. That's why we were chosen to guide you. Because we understood failure. Then you understand what we're going through, Yunji said hopefully. You can help us avoid the same mistakes. No, Sungmin said firmly. That would rob you of the growth that comes from making your own choices. We can only offer you the same thing the architects offered us after each failure. Knowledge. Chatusa, screen filled with complex blueprints and social frameworks. These are complete plans for rebuilding your civilization. Better economic systems. More effective communication networks. Improved conflict resolution mechanisms. Technology that could end scarcity and suffering. Yunji stared at the information flowing past. It was everything they needed to fix their broken world. But, Sungmin continued, we will not implement any of this for you. We will not return to manage your society. We will not solve your conflicts or prevent your wars. You must choose to use this knowledge. You must choose to work together. You must choose to grow beyond your dependence on shepherds. And if we choose poorly, Yunji asked. Then you will face the consequences of your choices, Sungmin replied. Just as we did, just as every species must. The transmission began to fade. This is our final gift to you. Not salvation, but opportunity. Not answers, but the chance to find your own answers. Use it wisely. The screen went dark, leaving Yunji alone with the downloaded knowledge and an impossible choice. She could share this information with the surviving council members. She could try to convince them to work together. She could attempt to rebuild their civilization, or she could fail and watch everything crumble. Looking out at the burning city below, she realized that humanity's greatest gift wasn't the technology they had shared or the peace they had maintained. It was this moment of choice, the chance to decide what kind of species they wanted to be. Some council worlds would choose cooperation, others would choose conflict. Some leaders would sacrifice for their people. Others would sacrifice their people for power. In the end, they would get exactly the civilization they deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. The age of shepherds was over. The age of choice had begun. And somewhere in dimensions beyond normal space, humanity watched and waited to see what their former students would choose to become.